you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and a very nice greeting from everybody. I appreciate you all being here, everybody who's a dignitary, and the rest of us too. I have a question for you, maybe two, before I start. So let's say that we have a 10 scale. 0 is low, 10 is high. How many people here in the audience would rate their skills in English at a 5 or better? Okay, and how many would say 5 or lower? It's okay. I'm going to speak slowly today. But I have to tell you, just to have a little fun, it's okay if we laugh at things, if there's something funny, it's fine. You know, sometimes I give a talk and people forget that it doesn't have to all be serious, right? We can have a good time if there's something to have a laugh at. Normally, I talk about this fast all the time, right? It's like this, it goes all the time, it's like this. So we're going to go slow, all right? And you may even say, I'm going too fast anyway. And if that's the case, feel free to tell me, okay, what was that again, right? And we'll cover it again, all right? So today, I want to talk about artificial intelligence in industry. And in industry, there are many different applications of artificial intelligence, as many as you can imagine. So I now have a second question for you. How many of you are familiar with artificial intelligence at all? A little bit? Not a single person? A few people? How many are completely new to it? They don't know really what it's all about, but they want to learn. Okay. And the rest of you maybe aren't understanding what I'm saying. I'm just kidding, I'm sure you are. Okay, so if we read headlines right now, artificial intelligence is very, very important, right? It's what we would call a hot topic, but it's more than just a hot topic. It's actually very, very important. So let me read with you. Normally I wouldn't read a slide with you, but let's do that together. So Forbes magazine, it's a very important magazine in business, says 80% of enterprises, that means companies, are investing in artificial intelligence right now. My comment is, I don't know what the other 20% are doing, because they need to be investing in artificial intelligence, unless those enterprises are very small. But Forbes magazine only talks about big companies, really. They don't talk about someone who has a restaurant, one restaurant, or someone who has a barber shop. Those people, maybe they don't need to have artificial intelligence. But if you have applications that Forbes magazine talks about, you need to think about it. How much money is being spent? So Axios says here that there's $46 billion being spent on artificial intelligence into just 2 years from now. So this is what it looks like. In 2015, it was about $5 billion. And it's projected to be about $46 billion in a couple of years. That is a lot of money. And I would suggest to you that maybe even these are low estimates, because not all companies are telling us all the things that they're doing that are investing in artificial intelligence. And also, not everything that they're doing that is artificial intelligence is recognized as artificial intelligence. There's something of a joke in America. It probably comes in different forms in other places. But artificial intelligence, historically, has been when things don't really work, then it's artificial intelligence. If it really works, then it's like a good algorithm, or it's software, or whatever we would want to call it. But nobody would want to invest in something called artificial intelligence, because it sounds kind of like it won't work. But they would invest in software, because that would work. But now people understand that what we talk about in artificial intelligence really can make a very big difference in our lives in many different ways, in industry and more broadly too. So let's think for a second on this one graph that I have, this one picture. How many different applications of artificial intelligence in industry are there here? Because I suggest to you there are probably 100. So let's look at this car. This is an Uber car, right? And it has a self-driving capacity. So it's using artificial intelligence. Now we could say that just because it's self-driving, it's using artificial intelligence. But in order to do that, it has to have many, many different smaller aspects of artificial intelligence. For example, it uses radar. Right? It uses radar to find out where things are. It might use lasers too to find out where things are. Every one of those times when it sends out a signal, it gets a signal back. And it has to recognize what that signal is. Oops. All of that is artificial intelligence. How fast should it go? That's also artificial intelligence. When would we need to have that car in for repairs? Well, if you're Uber and you have a bunch of these cars, you have to decide, how many cars do I have out on the road at one time versus how many do I have getting repaired at one time? That's also artificial intelligence. There's probably another 20 different things just from that one car. Let's talk about this. This is the Port of Singapore. There's a lot going on there, right? So I had the privilege in the 2000s to work for the United States government in looking at how do you screen the contents of these containers for risk. Now that risk could be something like something's going to explode. That's one sort of risk. Or it could be that the contents of the containers might be food. And therefore, when it gets unloaded and distributed to all of us, is it safe to eat? Is it what they say it is? Maybe they said it's something, but it's something else. Or maybe there's something else in that container that isn't what they said. Right? And how can we use artificial intelligence to help understand, just from the information that we know about what's described about that container, one of these little containers, and where it's been, and who owns it, and who paid for it, and what information was provided to the Customs Department, and where is it going, or at least where is it that they say it's going. How can we make an assessment about which things are the most important things to look at, and which things are the least important things to look at? In America, we have the ability to look at maybe 2% of all the containers that come into the country. Maybe 1%. So it's very important to be able to say which ones are the really important ones to look at, because we can't look at all of them. We don't have enough people to look at all of them. When I was on this project, I asked someone in the Coast Guard, which is part of the United States military, but they're also involved in safety and security for these sorts of containers, how long does it take to do an inspection? And they said, well, it depends. If they inspect every single little thing in the container, it's going to be 4 hours. If they do something a little bit quicker, maybe 2 hours. Maybe 1 hour. Right? Can you imagine spending 4 hours on every one of those containers to figure out if something is okay? We would never, we wouldn't be here. There'd be no fuel for this car, right? There'd be no food for us to eat. There'd be nothing. So we can't do that. So we have to use artificial intelligence to help us figure out which things we want to look at. At this point, I want to say something that's very important. We hear a lot about artificial intelligence replacing people. And in some cases, I have to say, yes, that would be true. So in San Diego, where I live, I went into a McDonald's last week. And I went to the counter to order my hamburger. And the counter had a sign that said, please use the kiosk. The kiosk means the machine. Okay, so I went to the machine and I said, wow, the machine actually is replacing this person. Now there was a person there, and if I said, no, I want to talk to that person, they would have said, okay, that's fine, we still want to give you a hamburger, right? They wouldn't have said no. But it is true, for some jobs like that, okay, we might be able to replace that person's job and give them a different duty, responsibility. But for people who have to make actual intelligent decisions about things, probably not for a very long time, right? What we're going to end up doing is helping them make these decisions better, faster, more effectively, more cheaply. That's the promise of artificial intelligence today, not really replacing anybody. Let's think about this city that's in the back here. Does it use artificial intelligence? How about all the energy that goes into that city? Do you think there are artificial intelligence applications for the power grid for a city? Yeah, there's a whole power engineering component of the Artificial Intelligence, Computational Intelligence Society in the IEEE that deals with exactly that. And you can read many, many hundreds of papers on artificial intelligence for engineering power. Also, if you design the buildings, you want them to be energy efficient. Right? So we've worked with companies that think about that, and they say, how is this building being used during a day? And how can we help design how many solar panels need to be on the roof? We don't want too many, that's too expensive. We want just enough. And how do we store the energy from those solar panels? Do we want big batteries inside? Do we want to transmit the power someplace else and store it in some place that already has batteries? There are many, many, many considerations. When you design that building, which way does it face? Because it's going to have a different energy profile for the sun depending upon which way it faces. So even in architecture, there are ideas that artificial intelligence can help us. We could probably find many more. There's a boat here. How do we put the containers on the boat optimally to get the most on and still be safe, and also know where each container is, because we don't want to lose anything, right? Otherwise, we have to open the containers to find out what's in there. We don't want to do that. All right. Then there's these companies. What do they do about artificial intelligence? They do a lot of things in artificial intelligence. So some of them make hardware that help us do artificial intelligence. Some of them use artificial intelligence to recommend things to us, right? Based on what we bought. Maybe I bought this thing and I bought something else. They say, well, you might like this thing. Okay. Maybe I would. If they can learn a little bit about me or about you, they can suggest things that make our lives better. Okay. These guys also provide computer services for people who have other artificial intelligence applications and need big computers but don't have them. Right? That's the AWS. Then all these guys. So how many people here like Facebook? Fewer than last week, maybe. Yeah. Well, I still like Facebook, and my friend Professor Lee posts many pictures of me during this 3 days on Facebook, and many people are liking it, so I like Facebook. It's very nice. They use artificial intelligence a lot, right? And they use what's called deep learning for facial recognition and understanding natural language. There's many, many, many different applications. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking with you about some of these things. I've just talked about some of them. Like, for example, if you're advertising a product and you're advertising on the internet, maybe you have to think about where would you put that advertisement? What time of day would it go? Who would you target it to? So, I don't know if anybody mentioned this in the remarks that were before, because I couldn't understand, of course, but I want to share a little story with you. So I'm a musician, I'm a composer, right, in addition to being a scientist. And I had a very nice opportunity to compose some music that accompanies a video of the total eclipse of the sun from last year in America. And having done that, I thought it would be very nice to share this with planetariums. I've been very lucky to have 40 of them now. The Taipei Astronomical Museum has it as well. 40 of them around the world are showing this music video that I helped make. But I also wanted to share it on Facebook. And I had to think, how would I advertise it on Facebook, have the most people see it at the cheapest cost to me? So I ended up using a little artificial intelligence and a little this sort of intelligence. When I started, I was able to get people to watch my video if I paid about 34 US cents for each click. By the time I was done, I was getting people to watch the video for about 2 cents per click. Now, I'm just a little guy, right? And I just had a free video for people to watch. And it's a nice video, you can watch. But if I'm selling things, like all those things in that cargo, it's very, very, very important to think about saving money, even like 10 cents on one click if you're doing it a billion times. You know, it has a really large impact. So there are all these things. We don't have time to talk about all of them, but all of them are important. And hopefully you have my slides later. You can look at it if you like and take a look at them. There are 3 companies that I'm an advisor on in America. And I don't mean to advertise them, but I like what they're doing. So I just want to share these sort of ideas with you. They have competitors, but LeadCrunch is one where they're using artificial intelligence to do data mining based upon what your customers, if you're a business, they look at your customers and then they generate parameters that describe your customers. Then they go to the internet and they say, who else has those same parameters, and sends those information, the information on those businesses to you so that you can send your marketing to those businesses. Right? It helps you find business leads much more effectively, and they're doing very, very well. Another one is called 6 Sense. Here's another artificial intelligence application. In America, particularly in hospitals, this is a good medical example, it's very expensive when a hospital loses a physician. What do I mean by losing a physician? Well, in America, the doctors are working a lot. They probably do too here, right? Yep. And when they work a lot, they get what's called burnout. You might have burnout here too. You just work too much, and you're like, I need to quit. Well, when a doctor quits, it costs the hospital almost $1 million. Because they have to go find a new one, they have to spend all the time interviewing new ones, they have to hire that person from someplace else, and then some of the patients who like that doctor who quit will also leave. And so as a business, it's not very good when a doctor quits. So it would be great if we could intervene before the doctor is burned out and help that doctor make sure that he or she stays energized and happy about what they're doing so that they don't get in that situation. This company, 6 Sense, looks at the parameters associated with how that doctor is performing in order to make a prediction in the future about how likely that doctor is to leave, so that they can take action on it before it's an issue. There's another company, this one's in Arizona, that is using artificial intelligence for what we call logistics, right? For transportation optimization. But instead of doing it for very big companies, they're doing it for lots of small companies. These are the kind of companies who need to fix your refrigerator, or your plumbing, or they need to do electrical work at your apartment. And they need to show up at a particular time, and hopefully it's the time that you want them to come, and not the time they just want to come. It has to be somebody home, right? And then they want to make sure that the person who shows up has the right skills to do the job. Maybe you need more than one person. So you could imagine if you had 100 of these service workers going in a day, it would be a complicated problem to figure out what is the best way to send all these 100 people to customers to fix things for that day that's best for us and best for them. And that's what this company is working on. Here's a question. Who is smarter, C-3PO or R2-D2? How many people say R2-D2? I agree with you. Who says C-3PO? Okay, well, we need to talk. So, who do you relate to better, C-3PO or R2-D2? How many say R2-D2? How many say C-3PO? Yes, I agree with you. The question would be why? The answer, let me back up. The answer is, there are two. One is, C-3PO looks like a person. R2-D2 looks like a robot. Okay, so immediately when we think about artificial intelligence in the future, it's very important for us to think about how do people interact with that artificial intelligence. Sometimes we think about just artificial intelligence solving problems. Okay, and that's fine. But as soon as it interacts with me, like when I go to McDonald's, and they say, go to the kiosk, and the kiosk is just a screen, instead of like an image of a person who would talk to me, and might remember me from the last time and say, hi, David, last time you had a filet-o-fish sandwich. Would you like one again? That would be nice. I'd probably be more likely to go. So if we can think about making artificial intelligence that is more like C-3PO, but smart as R2-D2. The C-3PO sometimes is not that smart. All right. But there's another thing. We can relate to C-3PO, one, because he speaks English, maybe he speaks Chinese. He speaks many languages. Right? R2-D2 does not. R2-D2 speaks and listens. Right? They're hard to understand. He also speaks with emotion. Right? He also uses emotion. This is something that I think is incredibly important in artificial intelligence that has not been given very much attention. And that's what I want to talk about now with a little bit of English, which I think is also very important for companies that are not in America, because when you export things outside of the country and they go to an English-speaking country, it's really important to understand what is the emotion that someone's going to have when they hear about your product. As you may know, most people do not buy things because it's logically the right thing to do. They buy things because it makes them feel good. So it's not enough to just say, this is the right solution and it's 2 cents cheaper, and you have to make them feel good about it. So let's think about that. There's a program that I was mentioned called Effect Check. This is sentiment analysis. And I'm going to read this with you. I'm going to read it a little slowly, but it's important. You may remember there was a time last year that United Airlines had a problem. They removed one of the people, he was a doctor, he removed one of the people by dragging him off of the airplane when he wouldn't give up his seat. And this was very bad publicity for United Airlines, and I must say, really dumb, right? That would be a stupid thing to do as a company. So Oscar Munoz was the CEO, is the CEO of the company, and I'm going to read this with you. This is what he wrote to his own United employees. Keep in mind, this is a huge company with many people who work in public relations. Very experienced people. Dear team, the truly horrific event that occurred on this flight has elicited many responses from all of us. Outrage, anger, disappointment. I share all of those sentiments, and one above all, my deepest apologies for what happened. Like you, I continue to be disturbed by what happened on this flight, and I deeply apologize to the customer, forcibly removed, and to all the customers on board. No one should ever be mistreated this way. Let me stop here for a second and ask you a question. Would that paragraph have been better if they had identified the person by name? Yes. Yes. I want you to know that we take full responsibility and we will work to make it right. It's never too late to do the right thing. I am committed to our customers and our employees that we are going to fix what's broken so this never happens again. This will include a thorough review of crew movement, our policies for incentivizing volunteers in these situations, how we handle oversold situations, and an examination of how we partner with airport authorities and local law enforcement. We'll communicate the results of our review by April 30th. I promise you we will do better. Sincerely, Oscar. Now, I use Effect Check and my own brain, and I had a little different letter. And I want you to read this with me, and I want you to just think about how you feel right now. You've heard that other letter, right? How do you feel? And now, let's try this. It's a little longer. Dear team, the truly horrific event that occurred on this flight has elicited many responses from all of us. Outrage, anger, disappointment, and empathy for everyone involved. I share those sentiments and offer my deepest apologies to the passengers, crew, and to our family at United customers who rely on us to fly them through the friendly skies, on time, and always safely. I want in particular to apologize to Dr. David Dow, who was forcibly removed from Flight 3411. No one should ever be mistreated this way. What do you think so far? You feel a little better, right? Yeah. All right. They should hire me, right? Yeah. Okay. I have vowed to our customers and our employees that we are going to ensure this never happens again. To do this, we are conducting a thorough review of how we move our crew between cities, our policies that are addressed when we ask for volunteers to fly on another flight, how we handle oversold situations, and an examination of how we partner with airport authorities and local law enforcement. We'll communicate the results of our review by April 30th. I promise you we will do better. Now, United Airlines has a rich and storied history. For almost 90 years, it's been our pleasure to serve the flying public. It's a privilege we appreciate, and we will do our best to ensure whenever someone wants to fly that they choose us, they choose United. Which one would you rather have had Oscar send? Yeah. So we can actually, without hiring me, we can actually use artificial intelligence to figure out that one of these things would be better received than another one. So I helped create this program called Effect Check, which has 50,000 words in a dictionary, and they're scored on anxiety, hostility, depression, confidence, compassion, and happiness. And we can actually analyze, in light of what other types of communication there are, how a particular letter or speech compares to the average. So this is what the original letter did. It was high in anxiety, high in hostility, high in depression, high in confidence, high in compassion, and just average on happiness. And this is how it flowed in time between compassion, happiness, and confidence. You can see over here that happiness is going up into the end of the letter, but you'll notice in the letter that I wrote, there's a whole other paragraph at the end, because this was not good enough for me. I did not want to see not getting way up into this corner with happiness, right? Now we can analyze why. This is my version. Lower anxiety, lower hostility, much lower depression, higher confidence, much higher compassion, which is the whole point, because he was apologizing about the situation. And a little bit higher happiness. This is the kind of thing when you have a product and you're trying to bring it into another country, you might be able to translate your language into someone else's language, but you still would lose the emotion, maybe. So it's very important to think about how that works. All these are different application areas for this sort of technology. Okay, I want to close by talking about healthcare. And unfortunately, our future mayor here had to go, but we were talking about medical applications. So, pattern recognition. So in medicine, there are many applications of artificial intelligence, and I had the opportunity to talk about some of them in the last 2 days in Taiwan and Taipei. Just briefly here, there's all sorts of things about cancer detection and tuberculosis and lung rate x-rays and understanding, can we identify people who have diabetes by looking at their eye, the retina in their eye? Can we predict whether someone's going to have a heart attack? It's called a myocardial infarction. And many more. And then, on the other side, where I've been working more recently as a chief scientist at this company, Trials AI, which is not a company that I started, but it's a company I like very much as I've been working with. We look at the clinical trials side for devices and new drugs and say, how can we help drug companies explore how to make those trials more effective, faster, cheaper, and without so much burden on patients. Which is, I think, one of the things that has been overlooked for many years in drug design. It's very easy to focus on chemistry and say, is this drug doing what it's supposed to do? But it's harder to focus on, there's a patient. The patient has to go from their home to some place that they're going to have some drug administered to them, maybe a hospital, maybe an urgent care center, maybe something else. They have to wait when they get there. They have to drive to get there. All those things take time. Maybe they're a caregiver for someone else, or maybe they have, maybe they're a single parent and they have children. If they have children who are in school, scheduling them for 10 in the morning is one thing. Scheduling them for 4 in the afternoon is quite another thing, because they have the burden then of figuring out what do they do with their children. Do they bring the children with them? But very few efforts have been made to personalize medicine by using artificial intelligence to take into account what's actually happening to the patient, not just what's happening to the drug in the patient. I had the opportunity to work on this sort of thing too, which is new drug discovery, but we really don't have too much time for that. So if you are interested in that, I encourage you to email me later. It's a really important problem, though, because it takes a very long time to make a drug. I don't know if you can read this, but 10 to 15 years to make one drug in America, to get it through the Food and Drug Administration. And many of them do not make it. Right? It's about 1/3 failure rate at each stage, maybe half at phase 2. And phase 2 is where we start to figure out, does this drug even work? Because phase 1 is it safe? Not does it work, is it safe to give to people? So if we could reduce that time by even a year, 2 years, that would be great. If we could reduce the cost by 10%, that would be awesome. And that's the kind of thing where artificial intelligence can look and see what other people have done. And just like in Lead Crunch, where we say, okay, what do your customers look like? How can we find other customers who look like those? In this case, we can say, what have other clinical trials done? What has worked? What does not work so well? And make recommendations to drug companies about what they should do to have a better chance of making sure that their clinical trials work too. Okay, I just want to do this last one because this is fun, all right? So there's color blindness. Now let's say, 2 minutes, okay? So let's say that you're colorblind. If you're colorblind, it's very likely that you're a man. Okay? Because men are more likely to be colorblind. I'll explain in just a minute. If you're colorblind, your closet looks like this, but this is what you see. How would that make you feel? Anxious. Anxious. So a doctor who's an eye doctor, who happens to be colorblind, came to me and said, can you help me make an app for the iPhone that would help me know what color my clothes are and whether they go together. Because in the past, one time, I bought a gray suit, and I wore it for 2 years. And then one time, someone said to me, "You have a lot of courage wearing that suit." And he said, "Why is that?" "Because it's pink." At that point, he had to be very, very careful about everything that he was wearing. So we worked on that problem. Now, it happens to be mostly in men because it's a genetic disorder and it's on the X chromosome. And we men only have one of those, right? We get them from our mom. Our mom has 2 X's. And if they have one set of good genes that are working in there, they won't be colorblind, but they can pass that trait along to us. And then we can blame our mother for something, right? Because usually mom is perfect, but in this case, there's no cure for this. And I have to say, not everybody who can't figure out what color to wear is colorblind. Some people are just like, let's see, can we get this to do this? There we go. Oh my God. This guy. He's not colorblind. He's just not, I don't know what to do with him. If somebody has an idea, let us know, okay? I'll build an app for that one too. But we made an app where it's called Color Butler, and it was released in the iPhone App Store about 2 weeks ago. And it uses artificial intelligence and neural networks to look at the RGB values that you get when you touch the screen. Like here I am with my charcoal colored shirt. You touch somewhere in there and say, okay, here's the RGB value and here's the color label. Now we had to think a little bit about how many color labels to provide, because I have to tell you, men are not as good with colors as women, right? I don't know if that's true in Taiwan, but it's definitely true in America, all right? Men are not as good. So if you ask me, what is the color periwinkle? I don't know. Lilac? Maybe. Right? Red? Okay, I know red. That's good. So you have to make it simple for someone so they can understand. So we have 21 colors. And it's free, by the way. It's a service that this doctor provided. So we help build it, and if you know someone who's colorblind, then you're going to encourage them to download it. There are many, many different parts of artificial intelligence. We hear about this part a lot, neural networks. And there's hardware for neural networks, there's all that sort of stuff. But in industry, I want us to encourage to think about all these things. Everything from sentiment analysis, which is called affective computing, to processing natural language, to simulating evolution on computers, and using imprecise language about things. Like, don't stand so close to me instead of don't stand 13.29 millimeters from me. No one would say that, right? All those things are important. And really, we're just at the end of the beginning now of artificial intelligence. It feels like we've made a lot of progress, and we have, but we're really just at the end of the beginning. It's just getting started. So we're going to be using machine learning, but there's also rule-based methods that come from a long time ago that can be very useful in certain circumstances. And there are numerous industry applications that will justify a lot of investment from investors. But I have to say, not all investors are going to be successful. So you have to be smart about how you put your money in. With appreciation of my hosts here and all of you, thank you very much for your time at the end of the day. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we go to the questions, as David mentioned, he's a composer and has written orchestra music accompanied with a video, especially before the eclipse of last year. If it's okay with you, can you? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's right. So can you turn off the light? Okay. Relax yourself. We have a wonderful video to see. environmental, but the delighting music is my favorite.
Thank you. So I was asked what artificial intelligence had to do with that music, and I have to say nothing. And it's all emotion, right? I have to say, if you haven't seen a total eclipse, I encourage you to do it, because for me it was a life-changing experience. Can't wait to do it again. Anyway, thank you so much for your time with me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if we're doing a panel, I can answer the questions during the panel if any are for me, whatever works best for you.